fantastic. Tell us, there's a unique knob on this particular amplifier. Tell us a little bit about that.
What did we wind up calling it, though? This is funny. I should know this, but I remember.
It's the Attack.
It's called Attack. Okay. This, I'm not quite sure we got the name right.
We'll scratch that out of the video. That's part. We'll figure that out.
But we noticed a funny thing that it's with almost with any other design of something. When you perfect how something performs in one area, you see that it does something else in another area that you weren't thinking about, really, because you're really focusing on how it works perfectly in this one area. And anyway, what I was noticing is that the more that you adjust the gain levels, that in order to keep that fresh sound, that not processed or electronic gain sound, but a real fresh organic tube sound, that you need to allow that gain control to affect the low end. And so when the gain control is low, it almost seems like it's not activating the low end as much. And then you reach a certain sweet spot, and then you reach a really crazy spot when you go right to 10. It was all really cool, but I started to wonder, what if, I know how I'm going to set it up, I know how I've been using it in the studio, but what if someone wants to use it the opposite way that Joe uses it, So what would we do then? And this brought in this idea of this attack knob. that is the word we're going to use, I guess, huh?
Well, if you want to change it, we're open to that too. But
maybe we'll have a contest
right now.
We'll have a contest, and people buy the amp and give us their own. But basically, what it does is, if we work in reverse, and the gain knob we try to reduce it. So it's in this particular setting where you're using a lot of drive, you're trying to see how little you can use. You can actually start to turn this knob up, and it sort of reintroduces the low end as you're losing it. And this is something, I don't know if anyone ever had like a late 70s Marshall Master Volume. They had this really weird thing that was very similar, where you basically had one really great setting on the amp. Everything else, the controls didn't work. And it was similar in design, where there was this optimum spot, and it made the amp sort of a one-trick pony. But of course, this amp it's got all these different things that it can levels that it can allow you to achieve. But I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to be one of those funny little characteristics that we just decided to say, well, that's just part of it, So we took the time to figure out, well, how do we do that? How do we reintroduce this sound? And when we finally figured this thing out, and we put it as a control, and like I said, at the time we really didn't know what we were going to call it, because we couldn't call it thump or rebase or reintroduction of blah 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 blah, whatever. Someone came up with Attack, I guess. Was that your idea?
No, it wasn't.
It's a good idea.
I won't take credit for that.
It's a good idea, because I guess when you're playing it, that's what it feels like. As you stand next to the amp, it almost feels like you're losing air, so you start to turn that knob up, and the air seems to come back, like you're pushing some more air. But what it's really doing technically is just allowing the low end to be reintroduced where it normally would if the gain control was higher. I know that's the longest explanation ever for just one knob, but that's kind of like what it does. But it really did help, and I can tell you where, while we were recording, and we would have a great guitar sound with, let's say, a JS1000 and drop D tuning, where the guitar was naturally sounding pretty bassy, and then we figured, why don't we put in, double that guitar with a Telecaster and put it on the right side. We use the same amp, and all of a sudden you notice, well, that's different. The Telecaster is just being interpreted in an entirely different way. You've got all this different kind of high end, and the low end is kind of funny. That using that knob allowed you just to leave the rest of the controls alone, and it's sort of it reintroduces the low end, but not at a spot where it would be distorted by the gain control, which is very useful in just tightening it up a little bit and allowing it to sort of coexist with the other guitar part. That helped us out quite a bit. And And then obviously the volume thing is a very big issue when you're running an amp really low and the gain's high, you know, the typical bedroom or rehearsing in a house or something like that. That knob also will help sort of give you that sound of energy, give you the feel of energy. And you'll find that when you're playing a hollow stage and you're playing up loud, you're going to be dialing that down because you've got enough low end flying around the room. And the sheer volume is also activating the speakers. And so it's a useful tool for it's almost like a tuning thing in a way, but technically, you know, it's a reintroduction of low end.